Finnish black metal band Odious Devotion did a good album back in 2018. I got to review that in 2019, and here now we are with the second album called Consecration. The self-titled debut album proved to be very well matured black metal with melodies and, well, good songwriting all in all. But that's one of the problems with the second album. They made so good debut album, or they, back then it seemed to be, I guess, only one person. Anyway, the debut album was so good that it was kind of inevitable to be a disappointment when the style is changed just a little bit too much for the second album. Now the thing here is, a lot of things have changed since the first album, so prepare for it of an impact, and I'm afraid not only in a good way. Now of course it's a matter of taste, but for me the second album doesn't really seem to do the trick. This 30 minutes of an album is a weird one. It has only one intro track, then it's an outro track, and then only two, actual tracks. When I say only one intro track, I don't know why I say only one. Obviously, there's supposed to be only one track as an intro. Anyway, the point here is you have two instrumental tracks which constitutes some 7 minutes in total, and then you have these two lengthy tracks which are kind of a mismatch of styles. Now, the first thing you kind of figure out when listening to your album and trying to understand whether you like it or not is that the production is so much more vile and a lot rawer than it used to be. It actually makes me think as if this was kind of a demo recording done prior to the debut album. It feels like everything is way more unprofessional, if you will, and sounding so much more lame and weak compared to the original one. Also, the songwriting is now way more dubious in nature. First of all, when you have these kind of lengthy tracks, you really need to figure out what kind of structure you're gonna have, the compositions as whole. I mean, unless you really have some killer ideas, be it about riffs and structure, it's gonna most likely fail, especially when we're talking about black metal with the faster tempo. You might maybe give it a little bit of a different approach when you're doing some kind of a slow-ending doom or drone, but 14 minutes, not gonna cut it unless you have a killer idea. And unfortunately, this album doesn't really have those. Now, some points there are better melodies, and the band is basically like flirting with the idea of, hey, maybe this could come back. But really, it never reaches climatic moments when you're like, hey, I really enjoy it. I mean, everything from the start to the end, you feel like, okay, this is much like the one release they never put out before making the debut album, and makes this sound like as if this was a kind of rehearsal room version of what there could have been. It's not even so much about the sound, obviously. It's more about that this album seems to lack those good riffs. There are lots of filler riffs which just kind of are between the good ideas, but those good ideas are too few and too scarcely played. So in essence, you have kind of a mediocre-ish album. Well, a little bit better than that, but still something that I would say, if I would give the score, I would say this one review with 60 points or 60% score is what I'm thinking about this album. Like, way too often this album seems to be just like waiting for something nice to happen. And when those nice things happen, they're over way too quickly. And the result is rather mediocre an album. Now, there are two vocalists this time, and I don't know if I underlined it here or emphasized it too much, but given that the band previously did that point that it was only one member, there was actually no lineup information mentioned, but you could see only one person. Now it seems like there are three guys, and it sets like three guys doing synths, the main guy doing basically everything, but also a second vocalist and second synth player. And everything seems like, okay, you have more ideas this time, you have more artists, but all it brings to my mind is too many cooks can spoil the broth. It's very much present here because it feels like now everything is apart and like they're not able to put it back together. As if you have just deconstructed a piece of machinery or equipment, and you're like, how did this Lego castle was built once again? And the result is disappointing. It's not bad, but it's quite a mediocre release with quite a subpar production, and in my opinion, this is only for fanatics. Unless you are really ready to give everything you got for this band and this album, I think it's gonna be a disappointment, especially if you heard the first one. So be warned, but I don't know, maybe you need to give it a chance, maybe I'm all wrong and all that stuff. Figure out for yourself, but I cannot be honest and recommend this with full heart at the same time. That being said, give it a go. You will find the link provided to the music, and if you like it, let me know.